What are the things you should do first as you begin to scale your organization? What activities should you defer until some others are in place? How do you sequence and manage the change to set yourself up for the best chance of success? Welcome to Agile Scaling Foundations with Barry Hawkins. Please be sure to like and subscribe. This video series is based on training that I have provided over the years, both as an internal product development leader building teams and as a consultant helping clients scale their organizations. In this episode, I'll introduce the first 4 things to start with as you begin to scale your organization, notably when using team of teams. Start with the obvious groupings. Recall from our episode on grouping teams that we have 4 guiding factors in how we place teams together. The first being size, that is, we're looking for a grouping of 3 to 6 teams. Then secondly, domain affinity, that is there a design, technical, or product domain that makes sense in bringing these teams together? Third, stakeholder overlap, that is, are the people who have a say in both the content and priority of this team of teams portfolio backlog generally people who are looking for the same thing, such that when we have conversations around priority and trade-offs, we're generally going to have a more streamlined path to driving alignment. And then finally, team interdependence, that is, teams that depend heavily upon one another to work together to deliver a big outcome usually makes sense as a team of teams grouping. So as you start to look at your total number of teams, and perhaps you're at 10, 15, 20, and it just seems paralyzing to figure out what groupings you're going to begin with, take a step back, because if you look, there'll be some areas where teams make a more obvious and intuitive grouping. For example, if you have a direct-to-consumer presence, the teams that are involved in taking customers through that journey from discovery to browsing, shopping cart, and purchase, that's usually a pretty good indicator of who you might group together first. Additionally, if advertising is part of your tech stack or product ecosystem, the teams that handle your ad platform and its instrumentation usually make sense to cluster together. And there are a number of other examples like this, but generally start with the ones that are just seem dead obvious. And that lets you get started with 2 or 3 and you're on your way. Gain comfort with the artifacts. You will recall in our episode on the core artifacts for a team of teams that the portfolio backlog and the portfolio roadmap are the core artifacts for a team of teams grouping. And be sure to allow for the time and space for your team of teams leadership group. So your team of teams team steward, product steward, the discipline stewards, usually you're going to have at least one engineering steward, QA or quality, and product design UX, just to give an example. Make sure that you're giving these people enough time to work with and iterate on and experiment with their portfolio backlog and roadmap, because while some aspects of the portfolio backlog and roadmap seem intuitive, after all, it's the higher altitude backlog and roadmap that is the aggregate of the grouped teams, individual team backlogs and roadmaps. But it's not that simple, and you want to ensure that you're allowing enough time, but also freedom and safety for your team to admit, this seems intuitive, but the first time I showed them to you, you had that face. And so let's talk about what this should look like, because generally a super common struggle as team of teams leaders are getting started is figuring out what the right altitude is for items in the portfolio backlog, and then by extension, the portfolio roadmap. So you may get started and find that what they're showing is basically like a vomiting of all of the team epics and team backlogs. Just that's the portfolio backlog. Give them time, but also clear feedback on whether you feel like the items in the portfolio backlog and roadmap are too granular and small, or are they so broad you can't even tell what they are, because they seem to just be categories of work. And the team of teams portfolio roadmap is another area where what I most often see is that your team of teams product steward will first attempt to represent everything that that team of teams grouping is working on in their roadmap. And so it looks like a massive distributed 12-person game of Jenga, and you can't tell what's going on at all. Let them know that you're looking, and this is just generally true for product roadmaps in general. Product roadmaps are telling a story, and people with a roadmap, people only have so much mental bandwidth to consume the overall story. So it needs to stay at an appropriate altitude to convey in a visual format where your key investments are, how the timing is lining up on the execution of those big key investments, and what crucial dependencies or market rhythms and events are making the timing and sequencing challenging or just harder to slot and schedule in order to deliver everything that we're trying to accomplish in a given month or quarter. Book the first monthly stakeholder reviews. You'll recall in our episode on events that the monthly stakeholder review is one of the key readouts that's happening on a regular cadence. And the monthly stakeholder review connects what's going on as far as execution at the team level to where we're headed strategically for this team of teams grouping. And you'll sometimes see your groups, they're gaining comfort with the artifacts, but then they can get into sort of an analysis paralysis of, well, no, don't do monthly stakeholder reviews yet. We're still working on the right altitude for our portfolio backlog, and we don't want to look stupid in front of the company when we deliver our first monthly stakeholder reviews. However, just pause there. There's, like all things involved in agility, you want to get started applying what you're learning as soon as possible. And you can spend, and I have seen groups spend weeks and weeks, if not months, before deciding, okay, now we're ready for the first monthly stakeholder reviews. But the very same learnings that I've seen some groups take when they just have a 4 to 6 week, gaining comfort with the artifact period, and get going. I've seen groups that take 3 months, 4 months before having their first monthly stakeholder reviews. The same learnings are starting then. It's not until you get in front of your stakeholders and whomever else, hopefully the whole company, is invited to be able to attend these monthly stakeholder reviews and consume this information. But it's not until you get there and start delivering that and getting the feedback and clarifying questions in the monthly stakeholder review, that's when you start learning how your intent is having its impact. And it's whether or not that impact is what you intended that informs the tweaks and adjustments you'll make in the next monthly cycle. So the sooner we get started, the sooner we can start learning. Dress rehearsals. Just like with musical or theatrical performances, there's a value in doing it as if it were live on the day at least once before. And this is especially true with something like Agile scaling and team of teams, because for many of the people on your teams and in your leadership group, this is probably the first time that they've had to deliver this kind of information on this kind of cadence at also this level of quality. And so while, yes, we want to get started as soon as we can, I do advocate strongly for dress rehearsals. And in these dress rehearsals, you want to have the group that is presenting, so the team of teams leadership group, so team steward, product steward, discipline stewards, of course, they're there. I also encourage you to invite the team of teams leadership for other groupings to one another's dress rehearsals, because there's what the group presenting learns in the course of going through their dress rehearsal, but there's also value to be had in having the leadership groups the leadership teams for the other team of teams groupings attend and observe, because then they're going to start having feedback and asking questions of one another. And now you have the seeds of what will become a community of practice who are learning, growing, and adapting together and building one another up, instead of being held off and who pulled off the best show, so that it becomes a, product leadership's got talent or whatever. You want to avoid that kind of vibe. So you want to have the actual people presenting and their peers and colleagues who have to do the same kind of presentation. And then usually the discipline leaders to whom that leadership reports, you want them there because they could and they should be a valuable source of feedback and guidance for them. And I'll also say, if you have some key stakeholders or executives that you feel can give valuable feedback, but in a psychologically safe way, then they can also be a good small cohort. Don't do the whole thing. Just a few that are trusted and that you feel are going to be a nurturing support to your team of teams leadership team members. Welcome to Agile Scaling Foundations. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Nope. This burp that I have delivered over the years. Yeah, that was over the years was in there. I didn't improv just then. Over the years, both internally as a product leader, developing teams internally, both as a product development leader, and then finally, team interdependence. The key artifacts, core artifacts, yada hooda hada doo dada. Let me just start that over. Dress rehearsals, but not with the headphones on. Woohoo! Thanks for watching. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and click the notifications icon so that you'll be first to know when new Agile Scaling Foundations episodes and other product development videos are uploaded. If you're looking for help in scaling your product development organization and development process, check out my link in the description below for how you can work with me. For the next episode of Agile Scaling Foundations, check out the video up here. For the entire Agile Scaling Foundations series, check out the playlist down here. Again, I'm Barry Hawkins. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.